Hi everyone, welcome to this evening's Preparing for LANTITE workshop presented by the Student Coaches. My name's Grace and I'm a student coach here at Swinburne Online, and tonight I'm presenting with Ebony.
Hello, this is Ebony. I'm the lead unit coordinator for all of the maths and numeracy units at Swinburne Online.
Wonderful, and so we just love for you to give us a thumbs up or an emoji in the chat box just so we know that you can hear us. Excellent, glad to see that. Thanks everybody. So as we get started this evening, we do have some workshop ground rules. These are basically common sense, but to respect each other's opinions and ideas, keep the chat box conversation focused and on task, so relevant to the slides that we're discussing at the time. You can raise your hand if you have a question, but it's best if you do pop it into the chat box as well. Engage in the activities because it does help everyone learn, and please have fun. It's not a requirement, but we do encourage it. So before we actually get started, what we'd like you to do is name the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear LANTITE. And I know some people have already been quite expressive in the chat box. Yeah, as we can see here, there's quite a lot of panic, hurdle, horror. We might write some of these up on the screen just so we can record some of our initial reactions tonight. We might revisit this later. So we have panic, a lot of confusion, not fair. Yeah. So there's definitely quite a lot of strong responses to LANTITE. So what we're doing, Nikki, is people are just writing into the chat box a free space, just saying what their reactions are, and I'm just repeating some of those back that I'm seeing. Yeah, so panic, confused, sick, exam, hurdle, horror, necessary as well. Yeah. Well, thanks so much. So let's keep these in mind for now. Remember what you felt at the start of this and we'll revisit this later. So what we'll actually go through this evening is, firstly, we'll bust some myths about LANTITE and what it is. Then we'll explore getting into the right mindset, so really orienting yourself towards sitting a test, especially if it's not something that you've done in a long time. And we're aware that you are education students and you may not have sat exams in quite a while because they're not really part of your degree. So we will go through some strategies for preparing, as well as let you know about some of the resources that are available to help you prepare. And then we'll also explore overcoming nerves. So to get started, we'll bust some myths. So we will set up a poll where you can select option 1 or option 2. But if you're on a mobile or tablet device, please don't worry because you can't actually see this function on those devices. What you can do is just pop your answer, option 1 or 2, into the chat box. So option 1 here, I only have 1 attempt to successfully complete LANTITE. Or option 2, I have 3 attempts to successfully complete LANTITE. So we can see the majority of you are saying that you have 3 attempts to successfully complete LANTITE.
So while we'd all love to pass on the first attempt, if you don't, see this as a learning experience to become familiar and comfortable with the test format if you're not feeling confident. Some of you may be thinking, what happens if I don't pass in these 3 attempts? What the rules state is that you may be eligible to apply for an additional 4th attempt following the 3rd if you meet certain criteria. So these may include things like having extenuating circumstances, having come close to passing, so within 5% of pass, and also that you can demonstrate that you've been working on building your own personal numeracy or literacy by using additional resources and support to actually help prepare for your 2nd and 3rd attempts. And these are all subject to not just Swinburne Online, but also to ACER approval, who are in charge of running LANTITE.
Yeah. So hopefully for those of you who thought you only had the one attempt to successfully complete LANTITE, it's a bit of a relief. You do actually have 3 attempts.
So Sharon, I'm just looking at your question. It's Ebony here in the chat box. If you fail on the first on nerves, what chance do you have on the second or third? So what you might find, Sharon, is that when you go through your first attempt, it might actually help you prepare better for a second or a third attempt because you're more familiar with the format, you're more familiar with what the content will be, and you also receive a report showing which areas that you've done well in and areas to improve. So definitely use it as a learning experience and see if you can help improve in the second or third attempt. And Sam, I can see you saying you got a lower score or a lower band in your second attempt. So make sure that when you're doing that, Sam, when you're preparing for the next one, that you take on board the reports and the feedback and use all the support that we've got available to help prepare. So we'll go through that a little bit later, what kind of support we've got to help you prepare and to get to that level. And we'll be going through things in this session to help with some of that anxiety and to help you calm your nerves as you attend these sessions.
Absolutely. That's the purpose of tonight's workshop, and it speaks so much to your commitment as well that you've taken this step to actually join a workshop like this to explore strategies to help you with your LANTITE attempts. And to answer your question, Denisha, you need to have made your first attempt by the time you get to 16 units. So our second myth here, I need to be an expert in literacy and numeracy at a tertiary level to succeed in LANTITE. Or option 2, I need to demonstrate competency in literacy and numeracy to the standard stipulated for professional teaching.
If you could have a go at the poll, guys, I think it should be showing on your screen now. No? No? Okay, no worries. Perhaps just put in the chat box whether you want to go 1 or 2. Thank you. Great, guys. We can see that most of you have picked option 2, and that's exactly right. So it's not about being an expert in literacy and numeracy. What ASA actually say is that students demonstrate that they have been assessed as being in the top 30% of the adult population for personal literacy and numeracy. So the reality is that there is a standard. However, this need not be a debilitating fear. Use it to motivate you.
Yeah. So we do have our third and final myth now. We'll see if this poll works. So just bear with me. Let me know if you can see this one now. So the first option here is that LANTITE is a requirement of Swinburne Online only. Or option 2, LANTITE is an Australian government requirement to graduate from education teaching degrees.
Yeah. Fantastic, guys. We can see that you're all picking number 2. So every single student that would like to be, or a graduate would like to be a teacher, needs to complete LANTITE. So it's not just a Swinburne Online requirement. All pre-service teachers in Australia must meet LANTITE.
So now we have a bit of a summary of the myths So hopefully that's busted some of the myths that you may have come into this workshop with. So we can see that you have 3 attempts to successfully complete LANTITE, and in some circumstances you may even be granted a 4th attempt. You need to demonstrate competency in literacy and numeracy to the standards stipulated for professional teaching, and LANTITE is actually an Australian government requirement to graduate from education teaching degrees, so you're not the only people in this boat.
So you can see that we've listed here some of the testing windows, just to give you a bit of a heads up of when they're coming up soon and when the registration closes and when the test window dates actually are. So that's just to give you a bit of heads up when they're coming. There are 2 different ways that you can sit the test. That's by actually attending one of the test centres or by what's called remote proctoring, where you can do it from home, but you need to make sure that you register early, because that does finish a bit earlier than when the normal registration closes.
Absolutely.
And just looking at a couple of questions here. So Samantha will be following up with students once we if you don't pass, say, by your 3rd attempt, then we will be in contact with you to offer some further support and to help to see whether you qualify for a 4th attempt. And yeah, if you don't pass, then you can't actually get your registration to teach. Okay, but we will be touching base with you before it gets to that point.
So some of you may have also received exemptions for units in your degree, and so if you've received an exemption for 8 units, for example, then you may only have 8 units to study with Swinburne Online in your education degree before you reach that 16 unit mark and will need to sit LANTITE.
Yeah, so it depends on when you've actually enrolled as to when you need to complete and sit LANTITE by. So there's all different rules. So if you're a bit concerned about this, I suggest that you check in the student portal under the LANTITE link, and if that's still not clear after that, you can always ring the student advisors and they can help direct you as to when you need to have sat it by. Okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Lydia, I can see that you've got some questions about the remote proctoring. It is a different system and it would take a little bit to get used to, so it's hard because we don't manage it, because we don't organise the test. We can't actually help with that, but if you do have questions about remote proctoring, it's probably best to actually go to the ACER website and see if they can help with any of the issues that you're having. We unfortunately, because we don't own the test, we can actually help with the specifics in that.
Oh, thanks for clarifying, Renee and Kristen. Yeah, it will be different for Masters, that being a shorter degree as well.
Definitely. So I can see Marge has a question here. I know that a few have said if you don't pass before your date, so we will be getting in contact with you. If you haven't passed or you haven't had your attempts by a certain time, then someone from Student Online will get in contact with you to discuss what the next steps are. Okay. Renee, we don't really have a preference either way for the centre or remote. It's got to be what works best for you and where you live. So some people, if they live quite remote, that might be the best option to do. But if you're near a test centre, then you can definitely attend there as well. We don't really have a suggestion either way, just what's going to fit best your circumstances.
Absolutely. And what we'd like to do now is really get you thinking about approaching scenarios that take you out of your comfort zone, but from a different vantage point. So what we have here is a case study about Gertrude. So Gertrude was 18 when she first attempted to get her probationary license, or her Ps. She was really excited to start driving, but the thought of having to pass a hurdle test freaked her out. And so Gertrude spent a lot of time preparing, but still froze up during the test and ended up failing. She was discouraged when she saw other probationary drivers getting their applications approved and photos taken for their registration. Fast forward 10 years and Gertrude is still unable to move past this event. Gertrude's now worked at a consulting firm and she's been offered a promotion. And so as part of this, she will need to drive to client locations all over Victoria. Now, Gertrude realises that if she's to accept this promotion, she'll need to overcome her fears and obtain her driver's licence. So how can we help Gertrude move on? Or what are some strategies that you would recommend to Gertrude if she was your friend? So Tara's saying that she'd partner up with Gertrude, recommend driving lessons, get driver's education. Yeah, focus on her goal. So you might offer to help her drive. Yep, so learning to drive in a car park when no one's around. So a lot of practice, and I can see a lot of offers of support here as well. And practicing under different conditions, starting in conditions that potentially are more comfortable to find your bearings first. So that would be in the car park where there's not much traffic. And then also, yeah, dealing with that anxiety and that pressure as well. What would you recommend, Nikki, to deal with some of that anxiety?
Love it, Nikki. Wine. I don't think that'd be very good for her driving.
Definitely not during the test. Yeah, so a lot of grounding, breathing as well, and talking through the worries. Absolutely. And so now we've explored some useful advice for Gertrude and some positive ways to encourage her to try again. Let's consider how we might actually approach LANTITE and bust some of the common study pitfalls. So what we'd like you to do is to consider the difference between these two statements. Statement 1, I need to overcome procrastination and revise for LANTITE or I'll never be a teacher. And statement 2, I want to maintain motivation, revise for LANTITE and give myself the best chance to pass. And so if you're comfortable posting in the chat box, just describe any thoughts or feelings that these different statements evoke and let us know what thoughts come to mind. So can you recognise any differences between these two statements and how do they each make you feel? Yeah, number 2 is more positive to Louisa. Yeah, so 1 seems more negative, 2 seems more positive. Yeah. Right, so that's the main difference here.
I like your comment there, Marge, about getting rid of negative thoughts and having a goal to pass, Alex.
Absolutely.
And it is hard to do, Sam.
Yeah, and both of these statements, they might be things that you do think when you're approaching a test such as LANTITE. But they do come from different perspectives and they might actually propel you to different action as well because of the way they make you feel. So what we'll have a look here on the next slide is essentially the consequences of these particular kinds of statements and our mindset. So number 1 is reactive. It assumes that you are giving in to unhealthy study habits and it takes control away, so it disempowers you. Whereas number 2 is more proactive. It recognises that there will be challenges, but it puts you back in the driver's seat and it empowers you. You're saying that I want to maintain motivation, revise for LANTITE and give myself the best chance to pass. And essentially what we're describing here are fixed versus growth mindset approaches to challenges. So initially our friend Gertrude had a very fixed mindset. And a fixed mindset believes that intelligence is static and that it can't be changed. You might avoid challenges as well. Or you might believe that setbacks define you, such as Gertrude believing that her initial probationary license test defined her ability to get her license. And a fixed mindset might also believe that effort is fruitless. And a statement that you might hear yourself say, if this is the case for you, is that I avoid asking questions in case I look stupid. Whereas a growth mindset believes that intelligence can be cultivated and is open to feedback. So this is where you use challenges to help you improve your skills, and you also believe and accept that effort is necessary and that setbacks are temporary. So you'd be open to asking questions, taking inspiration from other successes, and might say, I will learn to do this. That's right, Louisa, there's no such thing as a stupid question.
And Martha, I like what you're saying there, that if you are at this point, you probably have passed the hurdles in one or two of the maths units, and that is excellent preparation to get started on your journey for LANTITE. So if you can pass those maths units, then you're well under your way to preparing and revisiting some of the concepts that would be in there. What, to do the test for you, Sharon, or just for support?
So what we'll look at here is thinking about how you can adopt this for yourself. So Sharon, maybe reflect on some of these questions as well. So how does having an awareness of mindset types actually assist you in achieving your study goals? And then what's one small step you can take today to foster a growth mindset? And 3, do you foresee any challenges in adopting this growth mindset? But then how can you overcome this? So if you feel comfortable, share some things with us in the chat box. So, yeah, what's one small step today that you can take to fostering a growth mindset? What we have some examples of here as well on this slide are some fixed mindset reflections on LANTITE, and you might recognize some of these as well from things that you've been telling yourself as well. So I can't pass this test, or I've never been good at exams, I shouldn't have to do this test and it's unfair and a waste of my time, or if I don't pass this the first time there's no hope for me to become a teacher. And I'm sure that might sound a little familiar. But reflecting on that, we can compare this with some growth mindset reflections on LANTITE, such as I will do my best to revise and use the resources available. I may not enjoy exam conditions, but I can practice strengths and strategies to help me feel more calm on the day. I'll seek support and solidarity from my peers studying education. We're in this together. And attending a workshop collaboration like this is an example of doing that. And also remembering that you have 4 attempts to pass, and not passing each component the first time is an opportunity to try again, as Ebony was saying at the start. So moving on from these comparative statements, let's explore how we can implement some strategies to challenge fixed mindset thinking. And so an example of this is reframing. Now, reframing is committing to notice and challenge unproductive thoughts as we have them and replace them with more positive or productive, helpful thoughts. So it's considering, is this thought useful to my studies, to my revision, and my willingness to try? What's the impact of this thought? So this fixed mindset thought, for example, I've never been good at exams. And then the reframing aspect is asking, what can I tell myself instead? So the power of reframing is essentially that it puts you back in the driver's seat because you're focusing on what you can control and improve. So with this in mind, as a student, how can you think of LANTITE? What are some ways that you can approach LANTITE? How will it benefit to you as a current teacher, current student, and as a future teacher?
Yeah, Renee, we would like to see some of your ideas. So start to think about it from your point of view. So as a student, think of LANTITE as an opportunity too, and as a future teacher, use your experience with LANTITE too. So some of your ideas here about how you think it can be useful.
So it's opportunity to challenge and test yourself and your intelligence and really learn from that. Yeah, so you can also recognise what you need to improve. Absolutely, Chris. It's a chance to experience what your students might feel, so you're really building that empathy as well. And there's personal development also, as you're learning to reframe and refocus the way that you approach tasks and challenges. Absolutely, Lydia. So you're building those professional skills and setting the standard professionally that you would like as a future teacher. And feeling prepared, yeah, when you do step into the classroom.
And I think too what you've said, Jacqueline, there is building your confidence as well. So building on being prepared to teach, it's about having the confidence to teach as well. So, you know, when you're walking into the classroom, it's like we always say, that it is perfectly fine to make a mistake, and it's really important that your students see you make mistakes and that you can learn from it. But it's also important to have that confidence that not just that you have an ability in one specific area, but that you feel confident with your own personal numeracy and literacy to be a professional teacher and to be a support person for them in their own development as well.
Absolutely, and there's that confidence too in knowing that you've actually experienced a setback. You can say to a student, I remember when I was studying to be a teacher and I was so challenged by LANTITE, this test that I had to sit a million years ago, and look at me now. So you can actually believe that when you're saying that to someone too.
Exactly. And yeah, looking back and seeing how far you've come, like you will find that, I know, Marge, it was you that mentioned earlier about doing the hurdle tasks in the maths units, and when you probably began looking at them, you felt anxious and worried and all of the thoughts that we thought about at the start. Yeah, you freaked out. But now, after you've done them, you just feel, you know, excited and proud of yourself and confident moving forward. And you'll find the same thing with LANTITE once. Yeah, wow, you can do it. And while it may be daunting thinking about having to do LANTITE now, think of all those thoughts when you got through it and how proud and amazed you were with yourself that you'd gotten through. Yeah, and Jacqueline, you've just done it in maths in practice. Same thing, you just get that confidence that you can go on and you can teach it and you feel prepared. Great work, guys.
Absolutely. So you've given us some excellent answers here, and we've just got some more, which are essentially the things that you've said rephrased. So LANTITE is an opportunity to improve your literacy and numeracy skills, because it is about the process and doing the revision. Whether or not you pass in the first time, you've still learned something through that revision. You may have refamiliarized yourself with decimals, fractions, square root, something that you haven't looked at in a long time, and that's still worth celebrating. You're also ensuring that you're meeting the professional standards for teaching, you're integrating ongoing revision into your study plan, and we will actually go into a bit more time management further on in this workshop. You're also familiarising yourself with exam and test conditions, which is still a way to build empathy with your future students as well, who will undoubtedly be sitting exams and doing tests, and you'll even be administering those in the future. But you're building resilience through taking charge of your fears rather than letting them dictate you and feeling debilitated. And as a future teacher, as you all identified, you're identifying strategies that you can impart to students who might also be held back by fear, and you're building that empathy for students who struggle in similar conditions as well. And what I just mentioned there was using LANTITE and your revision as a way to improve your literacy and numeracy skills. And so that essentially is what we call a learning goal. And that's something that's geared towards the process, so revising practice questions for 30 minutes each night. Whereas a performance goal is about perception and appearance, so to attain a specific grade or to pass LANTITE. And both of these kinds of goals have their benefits, and it is a requirement that passing LANTITE is something you'll need to be able to register as a teacher, and that's a worthy consideration. But is focusing on that helpful to your revision now? If you're finding it debilitating and it's causing a lot of stress, changing your focus from a performance to a learning goal can kind of relieve some of that inhibiting performance anxiety. And so learning goals are then essentially the practical steps needed to meet a performance goal, and the success in a learning goal, so setting yourself that goal to revise 30 minutes each night, or to use the results from your first attempt at LANTITE to inform the revision that you do and the areas that you focus on, will help you. So if you know the material and then you develop positive study habits, you are more likely to avoid cramming and enter a test with strategies that actually support your success. And part of having that awareness and those strategies when you walk into the room are being prepared prior. So has anyone used the interactive weekly planner before on the student portal? Yeah, some of you have. That's excellent. But I can see that it's quite new for a lot of you already. So the interactive weekly planner is a tool on the student portal that you can use as a visual aid to break up your week and block out time for your commitments. So the way we recommend using it is to input your non-negotiables, and you can then map out a realistic study load, so how many units you'll take on in a teaching period, but also you can integrate LANTITE revision into your study across the week. So it's something that you consolidate. And then you're clarifying where your time is going, and you can make adjustments to your schedule as you need to. And then validate what a realistic study load is for you. And you might use some other organisational tools. You might use a pocket diary, or you might even integrate alerts on your phone as well. But what we'll do is we'll just pop a link into the chat box to the interactive weekly planner, so you've got that. So you can actually review that in your own time as well. Wonderful. And so if you open up the weekly planner, you fill in your sleeping patterns, so you've got that healthy balance as well. Then you put in all your non-negotiable commitments, as I mentioned. Review what a consistent week looks like for you. These things will change, and that's why it's interactive. So you can absolutely review this as you need to. And then place it somewhere that'll keep you that'll allow you to revise it, so you can use it to stay focused and motivated. And as I said, you can change this up as you need to across the teaching period. So once you've become time aware, and then you know where it is you can study and how study actually fits into your week comfortably and consistently, you're ready to commit to a study plan. And so having a study plan allows you to plan ahead and stay prepared. So you're actually prioritising what it is you need to do each week, and you're allocating time based on what needs to be done. So as we've mentioned, integrating LANTITE revision into your week. But you're also recording activities that are specific and with clear due dates. And so you're visually mapping out your week. You're staying up to date on your tasks and achievements, and it's really important to track your achievements. Reward yourself for what you've done so far. Then you can feel confident about what needs to be done and alleviate stress through spacing out your revision. And part of doing this and taking that time to consider spacing out your revision and giving yourself downtime is taking care of yourself, so self-care. And that is important because you are working towards something that is really challenging, and you're also putting a lot of effort into it. So it is worth taking the time out for yourself. And has anyone used a study plan before? It's pretty even responses so far. For those who have, are you currently using a study plan at the moment? And have you integrated LANTITE into your study plan? Yeah, Nikki, it's important to know yourself and recognise as well, if you're spending too much time planning, are you using it to procrastinate? And so if that was the case, what do you think you'd need to do to make sure you were doing the bare basics of knowing what you needed to do so you could focus, but not putting too much time into the plan? Yeah, wonderful. So putting some parameters around that. So I only have an hour a week in planning as well. And so what we have here is an example of a study plan, and it's something that incorporates LANTITE preparation. So you can see that a student here has their unit that they're studying for their degree. They've also included a column for LANTITE revision. So they've set themselves specific goals across this week in terms of what they'd like to achieve from their unit and LANTITE. So LANTITE is almost being treated as a second unit. But the important part here is also that you're tracking your personal goals. If you've got to take a little one to soccer, also integrating time for self-care. So this particular student likes to go to the gym Monday, Wednesday and Friday mornings as well. You've also asked a friend for English language tutor recommendations because you're thinking about getting a tutor to help you with literacy components. And an important part here is that you're documenting your wins of the week. And so, as we've said before, reaching out to your peers and building that solidarity as well is something that does keep you going. And so a win here is absolutely that I asked a fellow student for advice on how they manage their time. So really recognizing that you're not alone in this, you're not isolated. Though you're studying online, there is a lot of support for you to reach out to. And part of that are the student coaches. And so if you need help creating your study plan, or you really want to explore your time management and what's working for you, what's not, and you want to explore strategies, you can absolutely book in a one-to-one session with a coach. So what we're moving on to here is another case study. So being clear about what you want to achieve in a study session and having an actionable plan with study objectives will mitigate procrastination. But there will still be times where your will to prioritise is tested. And so what we're exploring here is a scenario with a student, Morton, who has choices to make regarding his study commitments, LANTITE, and his personal or family time. So let's help Morton overcome procrastination by exploring his options. And so in this scenario, Morton has a relaxing weekend trip lined up with his family and an assessment due Monday at 5 p.m. He's planned to revise literacy components of LANTITE in time for his tutoring session on Tuesday night with a maths tutor for LANTITE. Oh, sorry, literacy, not numeracy. I can read. By Friday afternoon, Morton knows that he should have already made a start on his assessment, but he's confident that he'll be able to fit it in and get the family ready for the trip in time. So what we'd like you to do is just take a few moments to reflect on scenario A. So Morton decides to get his family ready, and by the time he finishes, it's so late that he needs to go to bed before driving early in the morning. Or scenario B, Morton sits down to write his assessment plan and draft. He figures he can still achieve both if he schedules time wisely. So what are the thoughts or feelings that are the consequences of scenario A or B? And then what do you think the outcomes are? Yeah, so for scenario A, see, it's not going to end well, so there'll be fear and panic and maybe failure. Yeah, too much pressure. What about scenario B? What would be the outcome there? So this is where Morton sits down to write his assessment plan and draft and figures that he can still achieve both his assessment submission on time and also have time to revise his literacy questions for his tutor if he schedules his time wisely. So the outcome there is that he's feeling more confident and that, well, he's feeling more confident but also enjoying his trip away with his family. Yeah. So some of the, what do you think an outcome would be for option A? Failure. So failing the assessment and not enjoying the trip is too tired. Right. Yeah, potentially not a great score, even potentially a lot of panic and anxiety. And we've got some examples here as well. So in scenario A, you might be feeling more stressed and anxious during the trip, and as you've said, unable to fully engage or switch off because you've still got these concerns lingering as well. The outcome might be that Morton ends up staying up all night on Sunday to catch up on reading and write a plan, draft the assignment. And although, he might submit his assignment by 5 p.m. on Monday, so it's in on time, but there's no energy to review his literacy work. And so on Tuesday, he's using his lunch break to catch up. And the consequence there is that the weekend is stressful and the assignment's rushed and the LANTITE revision is neglected to a degree. But in scenario B, if you're planning ahead, then hopefully you're more confident and you're enjoying the weekend stress-free. And so he's finished his plan and he's completed his draft by Friday now. He's able to revise his draft on Monday and then submit it by 5 p.m. and review LANTITE on Monday evening, but only for an hour and a half. You might do some quick summarising then on your Tuesday lunch break if needed, but you don't have to do that. And the consequence there is that the weekend is more enjoyable because you've put some plans in place so you can actually focus on your family time as well. You've got some focused revision and then summarise what you need to do as needed. And then LANTITE is given due focus. So the idea is that, Morton's actually completed his first draft, so he's reading over that and he has done a lot of research. So he's put it all together on Friday. Then Monday evening, he just needs to revise, check for spelling, grammar and consistency, and then submit that assignment. So what we're doing here is we've just been exploring the consequences of putting things off and what happens when priorities do cascade, essentially. And we do often explore this more in coaching. So you might like to book a session with us where we can take you through some of that prioritising as well in more detail. But what we'll actually look at here are where you can access some of the resources that we've mentioned so far. So the ACER practice tests, and some people have brought up Cambridge LANTITE Edge as well. So here you can see some screen grabs of the student portal. So under managing my course, that's where you'll find the literacy and numeracy test resources. And we'll just pop a link up in the chat box as to where you can find this section on the student portal.
If you struggle to find it ever when you're just popping back in, I find that even just in the search bar typing in LANTITE as well is a good place to try and find it, because I always struggle to find it as well. I can see that we're starting to get some questions about sample questions, etc., and actual tests, and sample questions are not enough. So we're just going to touch on that now. We've got the link to the portal here, so to get into the LANTITE, that's where you can go, and we'll discuss resources available next.
Yep, so we've got the Cambridge LANTITE Edge, so that's a digital platform. It has a lot of practice tests, walkthroughs, printable resources to help you to prepare for LANTITE, and they are quite thorough as well.
Yes, so with Cambridge LANTITE Edge, you can find a link to request access to this in the portal, so under managing my course and under the LANTITE, and then someone will get back to you within a few days with a license to be actually able to access these. So I know some people have said the sample questions are different to the actual test questions. You'll find that the Cambridge LANTITE Edge ones are possibly a little bit different too. They're never going to give us exactly the same questions or the same difficulty. You might find some are easier, some are harder. Remember that it's not meant to be a resource that prepares you completely for all of their types of questions. What it is, they're provided to help you improve your own personal numeracy and literacy. So it's a way to improve, not as just as resources that will give you exactly the types of questions that you'll experience. Okay. And you'll see I provided the link earlier about the ACER practice tests. So you can go to the ASA website using the link we gave a little bit earlier. Just about to pop up another one here. I can see a couple of questions coming up, so I'll get to them in a second. I just want to provide this link here because something that's really important. You'll see that we've got the practice material there, and we've also got an on-screen calculator. So when you go in to sit these tests, you are not allowed to bring in your own calculator. You're provided with an on-screen calculator, and some of the feedback from students has been that they wish they had have accessed this earlier and had a bit of a practice before they went into the session, so they felt confident with this calculator because they were doing things by hand when they actually had a calculator to support them. So we do recommend that you go and have a good test of this calculator before you go in for the numeracy. Okay, so it's just something we've had in our experience. So I'm just going back to a couple of questions before we move on. Yes, so you can do some Googling, Marge, that's great. Some of the questions are the same as the hurdle tasks for maths, so you'll find that they're pretty similar. And someone here's asked about NAPLAN numeracy books. That's great practice as well, because ASA, who runs this test, also helps write the NAPLAN tests, so you'll find that a lot of the concepts are very similar in what they're assessing. So using NAPLAN tests either the numeracy books, or they've got them online as well that you can actually download and utilise. So yeah, you'd probably, Sharon, you'd be looking at 5, 7 and 9 for NAPLAN would be great practice. Just because NAPLAN will cover, you know, late year 7, year 8, year 9 and 5 will, so you'll basically get covered from 3 to 9. They don't actually say to you what level the LANTITE test is at. It's more they've got a list of concepts, but you'll be able to align that with some of the NAPLAN questions that have been asked. So yes, you do get to use the calculator, and it will appear on screen when you're able to use it. Okay, have I missed anything else there? There's NAPLAN literacy tests as well, so it's for both numeracy and for literacy. The NAPLAN ones, you can't do them online, Marge, but you can download them. So it's not like an automated marking system, but they have all the answers and that there as well.
And just to clarify for you, Catherine, the link that we've provided is just to the explanation of how to use the calculator as provided by ASA. So it's a PDF, but when you do register to do the practice test, you can actually use the digital calculator kind of simulation online, so you get that practice.
Lovely. So make sure that you head to the student portal and that you access these things that are available for you, especially this Cambridge LANTITE Edge. Some of you, if you've been preparing for this for a while, might have used what we had before, which was a Realise It platform. So if you've still got the license for that, you can still be using it, but this one here is the new way we're working, because it's got fully interactive digital platforms and there's walkthroughs and printable resources. So have a look and see what that can do to help you. There's practice tests, etc. in there that you can do online, and you just need to register online through our student portal and someone will send you a license. At the moment, I think they're being sent out twice weekly. So don't panic if you don't get that straight away. It will be coming, okay?
And so now that you know about some of the resources that are available, we want you to think about how you can utilize them to guide your study and your revision. So one of the things that you can do is set yourself up in mock test conditions. So recreate the conditions as closely as possible and sit those practice tests. Set a timer, ensure you're away from distractions, and practice actually taking a test if it's something that you haven't done for a while. Get used to that experience. You might even like to consider finding a tutor. If this is feasible, do so, but if not, you can seek out other online resources to further your understanding and use things like the Cambridge LANTITE Edge to guide your revision and use it to guide your understanding as well. And it's important to feel that you actually want to engage in your revision, to make sure you have a comfortable study space. Is your room and your desk somewhere that you'd like to be and like to sit across the teaching period, not just for preparing for LANTITE, but just in general as well, to make sure that it's something you're wanting to do when you get down and sitting down. Don't underestimate the power of having a tidy space that you want to be in. You might also like to create a revision guide and use some memory recall strategies. So you can link concepts with things that you already know well, try to relate concepts back to things that you've learned throughout your studies and throughout your degree. We also have an exam preparation workshop that the coaches have put together, which does go through exam preparation strategies in a bit more detail. So if exams are something that you're quite unfamiliar with, you might like to watch the recording of that workshop, which is up in the student portal, and we'll pop a link to that in the chat box in a moment, just so you can go and review that when you'd like to. And then, yeah, reflect upon your understanding throughout the practice tests and consider what you need to improve on, what you'd like to improve on, but also reflect on what you've learnt so far and how you've actually improved throughout the revision that you're doing. So instead of just focusing on things that seem insurmountable, focus on your strengths too, because as you've already demonstrated today, mindset is a really big factor in the way that we approach these tests and in the way we visualize and set ourselves up for success. Another tangible practical strategy you can take is, as we've mentioned, familiarizing yourself with the online calculator on the ASA website too. I wouldn't underestimate the power of just being familiar with the tools that you need to use so you're comfortable on the day. It's another unknown that you've somewhat mitigated through experience. Okay, so now what we'll move on to, in the final sections of this workshop, what to do on the day, so overcoming some nerves. But firstly, we'd like you to just get into a bit of a visualization, imagination space for a moment, and imagine that a friend is preparing for a major test, and your friend's struggling with test anxiety, and these nerves are causing them to feel overwhelmed, and they're inhibiting their ability to study. They've opened up for you and they're asking for guidance. So reflect on what advice would you offer them and what kind of language would you use? And is it different to what you tell yourself? And if it is, why? If you're comfortable, post your answers in the chat box. And particular consideration here is the kind of language you would use for your friend. So positive language, yeah. Can you give me some examples of what that would be? Right, so supportive. Yeah. So Marge would say to have a calming cup of tea and relax for an hour before the test. So really grounding as well, as Samantha says, so breathing, calming down. Practice, practice, and believe in yourself. So offering a lot of positive reinforcement. And then, yeah, Nikki's being really pragmatic about this. So writing a list of things to do to prepare. So really breaking things down into manageable, actionable tasks. So taking things one step at a time. And yeah, sometimes it is hard to be positive. And that's why it's thinking, Catherine, about sometimes it's hard to apply this to ourselves. So it can be useful to think about, how would I approach this if this were my friend? What would I say to my friend? Because it's often a lot easier to be positive and see the potential for other people other than ourselves. And Renee as well, what you've said is really important. So giving examples of times they've overcome challenges. And it's something you can do for yourself as well. Think of a time that you have overcome a challenge in the past, and what did you do then? Also consider the reframing that we practiced before as well. And so essentially, are you listening compassionately to your friend? You know, you're encouraging them to feel empowered and to focus on what they can accomplish, so things that are within their realm of control. And similarly, when you're approaching LANTITE on test day, there are some things that you can do to put yourself in a better position and to minimise stress, and that's making sure that you leave early enough to arrive on time and maximise the full allocated time available, including reading. And if talking to others is stressful, you can avoid it. That's okay. Yeah, so turning off Facebook, avoiding social media if all of that commentary is overwhelming you too. Absolutely, Nikki. So actively controlling your mind and encouraging yourself when one question is complete. Yep, maths is just patterns. So if you're stressed and anxious, you can repeat your reframed thoughts, and that's essentially what you're doing now, and recall your learning goal. Importantly, don't compare yourself to others, because you should focus on what you've achieved through your revision, and remember that you can only do your best, and this is all part of the process as well.
There's also some great tips for the test on the ASA website, so about things that you can and can't bring in, talks about water and things like that too. I think being prepared in that kind of way really helps settle you down on the day, so that you're not worried about what you can and can't do. So I think that helps just provide that calming kind of sensation instead of feeling stressed and anxious. And definitely not allowed coffee, Marge, because then you'll want to run to the toilet in the 2 hours.
So what can we do on the day for more self-care? Well, start with the questions that you think are easiest. Identify those. Build up your confidence first. And you can't get marks for things that aren't on the page. So always remember, something's better than nothing. And there's actually no points deducted for an incorrect answer. So if you're unsure, you can actually leave a question blank, and then you can return to that question at the end of the session. Now, you do need to remember, however, in the numeracy section, don't rush it, because once you've completed section 1, you do need to move on to section 2. So take your time with the particular sections, but you might like to jot down on a piece of paper that's provided to you which questions you wanted to revise before you do move on, so you can really focus that time.
Just on that, I can see Tara's just asked the question, should we read through all the questions first, numeracy? So just be careful with that, that you don't move to the next section without completing the questions first, because once you head to that section 2, as we mentioned, you can't head back. So you can read all of the questions first in the numeracy section 1 if that's what you would like to do before you answer them, but you can't move on to the second section until you're happy that you've completed all that section 1 completely. Okay, so it's up to you how you prepare. Some people like to read through all the questions first and then come back. Some people like to work through it one by one. So whatever strategy works best for you and the way that you like to work.
Yeah, and do remember as well that if you're moving on to questions because one's not coming to mind particularly easily, sometimes future questions might trigger the answer or trigger something in your memory that helps you to think, oh yeah, actually that's what that means. I can go back to that other question, and what was on the tip of your tongue has actually come to the forefront, and you can go back and answer that. And if you're stuck, also don't underestimate the importance of grounding. So take a deep breath. Drop your shoulders, because I guarantee they'll probably be up around your ears. So calm down just for a moment. Take a sip of water. Focus on 5 things that you can see in the room. Actually center yourself again, and then start. And there are actually some more strategies and grounding tips on the student portal, and we'll pop a link to those in the chat box for you. And so what we have on our next slide here is what we call the successful student snapshot. And so these are some common characteristics and traits based on student feedback and our research for what a successful student does. And so they're time aware and they're organised. They're persistent and flexible, so putting in the hard yards when things get tough and remaining flexible for challenges and shifting priorities as well. You have a productive study space, so you're setting yourself up by understanding what you need to focus to absorb information to be productive. So, you know, is there too much background noise? Is there not great light in your study space as well? Is there too much noise or chatter? And it's also practicing self-care, so being resilient as well and bouncing back from setbacks. So as we explored that with Gertrude earlier in the workshop, that's really what we're trying to drive home today. But essentially, a successful student who embodies these traits is taking ownership of their studies, being proactive and focusing on what's within their control. So what are your feelings now when you hear the word LANTITE? Given the things that you have gone through today, how are you feeling? So compared to what you've said earlier, which was a lot of horror, failure, stress, we can see here a bit more confident, a little more confident, doable, less stressed. And Marge, if you're still not feeling confident and you want to practice some of the strategies that we've talked about today, you can book in a one-to-one appointment with a student coach. While we can't coach you through the specific components of numeracy and literacy, we can absolutely go through the strategies of reframing, focusing on what you can control and devising a plan for you to move forward. And it's okay to not feel ready for it just yet. You know, it's a 1 hour workshop that we've worked through today. It's absolutely fine if it hasn't yet changed your entire mindset on approaching LANTITE. That's okay. So we encourage you to access the support and then review the support that we've mentioned tonight and see how you're going, and then you can absolutely book in an appointment with a student coach further. And so how you can actually get in touch with us is it's in the student portal under contacts. But essentially what we can do is help you identify and create a realistic study plan, and we'll support you in establishing your goals by exploring your options and challenging you to work through obstacles. Unfortunately, we can't provide academic literacy and numeracy specific support, and we won't make decisions for you or provide you with the solutions. That's not because we don't want to help, but it's because we're here to empower you to create your own study goals and identify the strategies to help you stay motivated. You're the expert in your own life and what works for you, essentially.
And we've had a few questions about where you can get academic literacy and numeracy specific support. So what we're providing at the moment is the Cambridge Edge. So there's plenty to work through there, and you can contact them if you're having some trouble as well. So definitely do that. And as other students have mentioned, actually doing some of the literacy and the maths units really help in terms of confidence and preparing for LANTITE. Okay, and so as other people have said, it's a really good idea to prepare as much as you can, and then if you don't pass in the first instance, to then really look at specifically the areas that you need to improve on and keep working towards that. Some people have said it might be getting a tutor, it might be revisiting some of these concepts, etc.
Absolutely, Jacqueline. If you pass literacy and not numeracy, you can repeat numeracy and do a second attempt at that only. Once you pass a section, you've passed that section. And what we have are just some testimonials from students who've accessed coaching. So if you would like to have a chat, book an appointment, you absolutely can. One of the important takeaways here is that, you know, ensuring that you're kind to yourself, reflecting on that internal dialogue. So what this student said here is that, you know, they recognise it's easy to get stuck in that self-defeating cycle. And it's absolutely something that you can work through. And what we would love is for your feedback on this workshop. We would love to know what you found beneficial and what we can do to improve this for future students undertaking LANTITE. So please follow the link there in the chat box and let us know your thoughts.
And if you're listening to this recording and you didn't attend the live session, please fill out this feedback form as well too, because we'd love to know from a recording if that was useful for you as well. So we've got just a couple more questions as I'm reading through the chat box here. So talking about the different structures of the test, do we need to write out our answers, etc. Head to that link that we had for ASA. That's going to give you specific instructions on what the test actually looks like, because there's differences between the literacy and the numeracy test and what they look like, how many questions, etc. So I'm just putting the link here again, which is the test taking strategy. But you can look at the whole web page there to have a look at the different links of what's there. Okay, so I'm just reading through some of the questions. Sharon, you want to go back to this slide? I think that one was it, Sharon. Yep. So we might stop the recording now and just say a last big thank you to everyone for attending and for participating. We hope that this session has been really useful from both the coaching perspective and giving you a bit more information about LANTITE. And again, I'll just pass over to Grace to finish off the session.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending, everyone, this evening. It really demonstrates, I hope that you feel proud for the fact that you've put yourself out there, you've attended this session, and that now you can take some of these strategies and try to apply them. And if there's anything that we hope you can take away from this, is that there is a lot of support available, and it's now up to you to reach out and utilise that to give yourself the best opportunity to pass.